I didn't want to go alone, so I convinced my fiancée Becca to come with me to Andy's place to see his sex doll collection. I promised Becca we would only stay for an hour or so. Andy was not one of the company's executives, but he was our chief engineer, and so he got a free pass to be as eccentric and irresponsible as he wanted, because he was the most indispensable employee at Didgerigible. There wouldn't be a Didgerigible without Andy Battenbury. There was no Didgerigible actuator or piece of software that Andy didn't personally approve, usually after making it better. And everyone at Didgerigible knew that the only reason that any of us had a job at all was because of Andy's indisputable genius. He'd written our first multi-million-dollar piece of code. He took a thermal rerouting system for supercomputers and made it work on laptops. It was a simple program. If the computer started to overheat or blue screen, the computer would immediately begin jettisoning data into the cloud and then shut itself down. No big deal these days, but back then it was big money. Andy and I had been working together since right after college. He said that I was the only industrial designer that he could stand. He made things work, and then I made his ugly inventions look good. I turned all of his raw edges and dangerous bulges into clean lines and smooth angles, which was also how our personal relationship went. Andy lived in the sub-basement of an office building in Midtown, a place that had never been meant for human life. He wanted to live 2 minutes away from work, but he also wanted lots of space and didn't want to be shoehorned into some cramped downtown loft. He made a big cash deal with the lawyers that owned the building, and then he brought in subcontractors. The B2 button was removed from the building's elevator and replaced with a keyhole. The only person with the key was Andy, so if you wanted to visit, you had to text him to come meet you in the building's lobby. Becca and I waited for Andy in beige recliners while the lobby security guards stared at us, grinning. "You here to see Batman?" the security guard asked. "You mean my very good friend Andy," I said. "The man who pays a stupefying amount to live in your basement?" "Dude calls himself Batman," said the security guard. "Battenbury, right? Calls the place the Batcave. Didn't mean no harm. Thought everybody called him Batman." "No," I said. "No one calls him that." The security guard shook his head and laughed. "He's not actually going to demonstrate how he uses these dolls or anything, is he?" asked Becca. "No way," I said. "Absolutely not. Because the thought of seeing Andy fuck a sex robot makes me so furious that I get dizzy," said Becca. "Don't worry," I said. "Andy will behave himself. He's just going to show us his collection. Maybe we'll have a few drinks. And then we're out of there." "Right," said Becca. "He gets them custom made, you know, his own designs. This isn't about lust. It's his hobby. Like model trains or something." "You don't fuck model trains," muttered Becca under her breath. Before I could say anything, Andy himself sidled up to us, grinning and gap-toothed with his hands in his pockets. He was wearing a striped pink shirt, untucked, black pants, and a straw boater, the kind of hat that a barbershop quartet would wear. He wasn't wearing any shoes, and at first it struck me as strange, but then I remembered that the lobby of this office building was basically his front porch. "Nice hat, Batman," I said. "It's made from real Senate straw," said Andy. "Most people call it a boater, but it is also known as a basher, a skimmer, or a Katie hat. Do you know what it used to mean when you wore a hat like this before World War I? "No," I said. "No one could possibly know that." "It used to mean that you worked for the FBI. Wearing one of these hats back then was the equivalent of a dark suit and sunglasses today. They got popular among trendsetters after the Great War was over. One generation's fascism is always another generation's boldest fashion statement." "Maybe they will catch on again," suggested Becca. "Nah," said Andy, "but this one belonged to Clark Gable, the actor. The fellow with the cleft chin, mustache, and jug-handled ears that the ladies love so much. Does it make me look like Clark Gable?" I licked my lips while Becca peered at Andy, humoring him. She was trying her damnedest to be nice. I had to give her that. "Maybe a little bit," said Becca. Andy was just over 5 feet tall, and he had a full beard that covered up most of his shiny red face. He was skinny and frail-looking, like a sparrow that had just been knocked out of the sky by a vicious cat. His back was bent and misshapen from scoliosis, and his teeth were permanently stained yellow from all the coffee and energy drinks that kept him alive. He did have jug-handled ears, though. I love it when beautiful girls lie to me, said Andy, winking at Becca. Let's go back to my place. We followed him to the elevator. Andy turned his key and we fell down 2 stories into the hole where Andy lived. When the elevator doors slid open, Becca and I were both surprised to find ourselves in a tasteful, cozy living room. Andy's den was all cream-colored couches, deep pile carpet, and hidden light sources. All of the furniture was positioned in the center of the room, including his Danish modern desk and his 4 sleek computers. I don't know what I expected. A leaking, reeking den covered in bugs and congealing plates of fatty junk food, perhaps. But instead, his place was scrupulously clean and totally inviting. Andy laid out a tray of petite fours, tiny little pastries that looked just like miniature apple pies, and we took our seats. In the back of the main den was a full kitchen, and there were 3 doors along this back wall. There were 4 other doors on the short walls, making a total of 7 doors that led out of his den. What can I get you guys to drink, he asked. Whiskey, beer, soda, lemonade, sparkling water, tomato juice? Some kind of liquor, I said. Me too, said Becca. Andy fixed his tall glasses of bourbon and ginger ale. Something hard, hidden in something sweet and bubbly, said Andy, just like a good woman. Speaking of that, I said, when are we gonna go out again like we did last month? We should hit the bars, man. I worry about you all alone down here. You're in your prime. Don't you think it's time to go out and start dating again? There are so many women out there in the world. I'm really busy with my dolls and with my work, said Andy. I hardly have the time, even if I were to find somebody as good as Monica, which is impossible. Monica was years ago, said Becca. It doesn't feel like years, said Andy. I downed my bourbon and ginger ale and ate a mini apple pie in the awkward silence that followed. Enough talk, I said. Let's see these dolls. Which door are they hiding behind, Batman? All of them, said Andy, swooping off his hands and holding it to his chest, rising to my level of enthusiasm. Behind each door is a different room with a different bed and a different simulacrum. He adjusted his glasses and grinned. This is so fucking creepy, said Becca. I have to know, why do you do it? Andy stopped grinning and his face twisted into a sour expression. I laughed, hoping to diffuse them both. Andy stared at his shoes, and Becca crossed her arms. I love to make physical things, said Andy after thinking about it. But when I make computers and machines for work, they never come out right. They're ugly, cold, functional, but never beautiful. Women already have a perfect form. They're the perfect plastic for clumsy hands. When I make a doll, I don't have to worry about form, just the details. Well, where should we start then, I said. Give us the grand tour. Doesn't matter to me, said Andy softly. I shrugged and opened the first door on the left. I prepared to be shocked, but there was nothing shocking about the room at all. In fact, the room held all of Andy's furniture from college. There were posters on the wall, and his action figure collection was lined up on his shelves. There was a carpet shaped like a spaceship, and there were pink beanbag chairs next to a bright blue aquarium full of betta fish. Up against the far wall was a bunk bed, the same bunk bed that Andy had been sleeping in for years. There were only a few things that were new about this room. There was a desk in one corner with a telephone and a computer, and behind the desk there was a red dress draped across a rolling chair. I looked around for the sex doll. There was a human-shaped lump in the bottom bunk of Andy's bed that was covered by sheets that were colored deep bordello crimson. See, I told Becca, no big deal. I sleep in this room most nights, Andy admitted. I entered the room combing through Andy's bachelor mess. Socks on the floor, books stacked up all over the place, a dresser overflowing with uncapped toiletries. I walked over to the lump in the bottom bunk while Andy and Becca waited in the door's threshold. Is this the doll, I asked? I peeled back the covers. Oh my God, I shouted, you killed her! Andy started giggling. Guess who it is, said Andy. It was obvious. Beneath the sheets, and staring at me with wide, dead eyes, was the silicone corpse of Andy's ex-girlfriend, Monica. Her pink lips were open in a slight pout, and her green eyes were glassy, but warm. She was naked, and her nipples were obscenely erect. I stepped away from her, and let the sheets fall back over her body. I get it, I said. Isn't she lifelike, said Andy, walking over to stand next to me. He pulled the covers back further, exposing Monica's parted thighs and hairy pubis. He put his hand on her ankle and bent her knee at the joint. He brushed his fingers over her eyelids, and they opened and shut with smooth, oiled grace. Blink, blink. I made her from memory, said Andy, as a tribute. There's no one in the world like Monica, and there never will be again. I wanted to preserve her. I mean, this is my house, and I can do what I want. Monica had been an administrative assistant at our downtown offices, and she and Andy had dated for 6 months several years ago. Monica had been pretty but awkward, a very sweet girl really, but Andy had scared her away. He had worshipped her, taking her out every night to the most expensive restaurants, and buying her all kinds of jewelry and high-end electronics, flowers and candy every day. After 6 months, he proposed marriage to her, and then she'd run off to China with a marketing rep named Brady who had a passion for surfing and good weed. Andy had been devastated. She wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world, said Andy, nor the smartest, nor the most loyal, but for a little while, she was mine, wasn't she? For a little while, I said. At first, I couldn't get over the fact that she would never be mine again, but then I got practical. I realized that she could truly belong to me forever if I was just willing to put in a little time and effort. She was my first doll. Becca was staring at Andy with a mixture of shock and pity. I noticed that there was a gold ring on the doll's left hand. What if Monica saw this, asked Becca? What would she say? I mean, this is some kind of violation of her essence, of her very soul. This can't be healthy, Andy. Not at all. I know what you're thinking, said Andy, but it's not revenge. It's poetry. Andy picked up the doll and carried it to the desk in the corner. He placed Monica behind the desk and kissed her on the cheek. Monica stared out into nothingness like an astronaut cut adrift in deep space, dead and stiff inside a frozen helmet. Technically speaking, said Andy, she's not a mere sex doll. She's a fully functional, specific purpose android. I could never be aroused by something without a function.